Horror films in 1976 brought us The Son of Evil Incarnate and the worst prom night in the history of cinema. 1977 brings us one of the best adaptations of Bram Stoker's Dracula and a Dario Argento masterpiece. As we truck along with our year-by-year breakdown, we present to you the 10 best horror films of 1977. So how do you go about successfully following up an instant classic like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Some would argue that director Tobe Hooper never really did, but a few years later, his next project following that landmark film was another grubby little shocker, set in the deepest, darkest backwoods of Louisiana, albeit a grubby little shocker with a different kind of bite to it. The film follows a psychotic hotel proprietor who feeds those who upset him to a large crocodile that lives in a swamp besides the hotel. Vacationing teenagers get stranded on a remote island where a reclusive Nazi has been bringing soldiers back to life. Quietly intense with dreamy hallucinatory images that at times feel strangely like mirages, Shockwaves quickly takes hold of you then slowly tightens his grip. The filmmakers allow the camera to act almost voyeuristic as it creeps through the trees to spy on the zombies that pop up from the murky water. They are presented as paranormal specters that are silhouetted by the blinding sun reflecting off the water. At times we see them from an extreme distance, marching in formation and turning to barely acknowledge their gaunt commander as he pleads with them to stop their meaningless slaughter. The fact that the film remains eerily tranquil throughout, never getting frantic or hurrying, is what really makes it such an effective little project.
We call them the Toten Call, the death call. Creatures more horrible than any you can imagine. Not dead, not alive, but somewhere in between.
Based on the novel of the same name by Dean Koontz, Demon Seed concerns the imprisonment and first fertilization of a woman by an artificially intelligent computer. With its far-fetched premise, the film had a mixed reaction from both critics and audiences. Although the film has aged some, it is amazing to see that a number of the ideas that it ambitiously addressed are still quite revelatory and on point. This film not only envisioned people living in houses almost completely controlled by computers, it also envisioned how intertwined our lives would become with smart technology, and what an alienating effect it would have on all of us.
No.
No. No. No. No. No. No. No.
There have been countless adaptations of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Some of them are more watchable than others, some border on the unbearable, and a few even cross that border and are less undead than they are just dead. This 1977 TV movie, produced by the BBC, is one of the better versions. For those familiar with Stoker's novel, this adaptation follows the book quite closely in most respects. It isn't the blockbuster vision of the 1992 version, nor is it the rich gothic horror achieved by Hammer. It is, however, a fine production, one that will appeal to novel purists certainly, but one that should find its way into the viewing list of all genre fans. David Cronenberg had a most interesting act to follow with his 1975 directorial debut Shivers, and boy did he deliver. Rabid is an unconventional vampire/zombie film that showcases its director's distinct aesthetic signature, which includes disturbing, highly memorable visuals that depict deformed human flesh, body transformation and or mutilation, bodily fluids, disease, and a plethora of symbolic sexual imagery. The strength of Cronenberg's sophomore effort lies in his ability to use these unnerving visuals to not only frighten his audience, but to also express deeper themes and ideas within the story. Indeed, after the shock tactics of Shivers, this venture into body horror is very much more subdued, but holds up astonishingly well for all the reasons aforementioned. A young woman moves into an apartment in a building which houses a sinister evil. One of the more unique offerings from the demonic horror cycle of the time, the Sentinel doesn't actually confine itself to one subgenre. Instead, it acts as more of a grab bag of 60s and 70s obsessions that makes it the successor to everything from The Exorcist to The Devil Rides Out. One can see all the elements from the big American satanic trio here. The opening, with some ominously intoning Vatican priests, echoes The Exorcist and The Omen, while the director returns the subgenre to the suffocating confines of an apartment building, a la Rosemary's Baby. The director also successfully replicates the overbearingly ominous tones of those films as well. While its mystery is compelling, The Sentinel is fueled by an otherworldly sinister feeling.
Through me you go among people lost. Abandon hope, all ye who wish.
The entrance to hell.
After 1972's Last House on the Left, director Wes Craven didn't make a horror film for 5 years, perhaps drained by filming the unrelentingly grim Last House and the controversy that followed it.
In 1977, he returned to the horror genre with The Hills Have Eyes.
In the film, On the Way to California, a family has the misfortune of having their car break down in an area closed to the public and inhabited by violent savages ready to attack. This, while certainly grim in places, doesn't reach the dizzying heights of depravity that Last House achieved, and is all the more rewatchable for it. It's one satisfying piece of pulp.
You folks go right to California and have a good trip. You folks stay on the main road now, you hear? Stay on the main road!
Seven schoolgirls encounter a malicious force in an isolated old mansion. As this entity picks them off one by one, the survival struggle to unearth a mystery which stretches back decades, hoping they may find a way to live through what was supposed to be a pleasant weekend in the country. Cue the inventive death scenes, cue the gore. Okay. Any simplified plot summary of this Japanese classic is bound to sound this commonplace, this trite. What such a bare-bones synopsis fails to capture, though, is the sheer weirdness of this movie, the cinematic anarchy the filmmakers unleash on audiences in the guise of a spooky tale. House is equal parts gory kids movie and gory horror flick. In any movie where, say, a girl comments on the naughty movements of her dismembered legs as they wiggle under the lid of a piano she's playing with her chopped off fingers gets points for originality. If you crashed a teenage girl's pajama party after necking some bad acid, this is probably what it'd feel like. An American newcomer to a prestigious German ballet academy comes to realize that the school is a front for something sinister amid a series of grisly murders. Dario Argento's kaleidoscope classic Suspiria is not set in our world. It takes place in a world of vibrant expressionism, of harsh reds, blues, yellows, and greens, of imposing and fantastical architecture and mazy interiors. It's a world where a heavy rainstorm means that sinister forces are at work, and maggots in the attic mean that something ugly is lurking just beyond the pretty surfaces. Make it only as much sense as it needs to. The film is a modern-day fairy tale of the darkest variety, and more than earns its reputation as one of the creative peaks of Italian horror, as well as horror in general. Henry is a hapless factory worker on his vacation when he finds out he's the father of a hideously deformed baby. Now living with his unhappy girlfriend, the child cries day and night, driving Henry and his girlfriend to near insanity. Eraserhead is a film of disturbing beauty and harsh reality. These two things may seem to cancel out, but in the talented hands of director-writer David Lynch, the film takes us on a twisted carousel trip through the human psyche and the troubled conditions of the soul. Too often cast aside as simply a weird movie, Eraserhead is a true visual masterwork that deserves the appreciation of its audiences that will on the face of it lead to a further appreciation of life itself. The interpretations are endless, and half the morbid excitement is in attempting to piece everything together to fit into the film's puzzle-like framework. Perhaps one day the ultimate interpretation of Eraserhead will rise from the shadowy ashes. Until that time, let us open our minds, invite the ghosts of our past to join us, and take a long journey down that utterly beautiful and completely terrified road known as life. Once again, thanks for watching, and don't forget to let us know your favorite horror film of the year in the comments section below.